Hey guys, it's Rob. This week's video is something I talked about in my Savage Worlds video I did a couple weeks ago. And that video was about finding settings that you like and uh, using Savage Worlds or whatever you choose to use for a set of rules to roleplay in. I use Savage Worlds, so that should be fairly obvious if you've watched any of my videos. So this video is going to be about Savage Worlds Diablo and how did I do it. So one of the key things that I wanted to do with a few of the games that I've started out with in this new edition is I want to use all of the little trips and triggers and neat things that the status cards and status tokens and the power cards and so on and so forth that came in the Essentials box. I wanted to use that for my players, and I got it, so why not use it? But I wanted to keep the games that I'm running right now. This will change in the future. But I wanted to keep it to where my players just needed the main rule book. They didn't need to have the sci-fi companion or the fantasy companion or any of that stuff. They just needed the main rule book, which they all have. And they could play out of that and whatever extra notes I gave them. I would like to give a shout out to my wife, who does not watch my videos, for the Savage Worlds leather-bound collector's edition of the rules. She got me this, and it is a thing of beauty. I love it. It's the same book on the inside, but it has 3 ribbon bookmarks, and it's leather-bound. It's really sexy, and it should have been, because it was fairly expensive. But anyway, the main rules is what I wanted my players to use. I'm using a little bit more than that, but I kind of had to in order to make this work. Now, as I stated in my other video, sure, you could just go, you guys make a fantasy character and I'll tell a story in the world of Diablo. But I didn't want to do that. For this particular thing, and I have done that in some instances where it's supernatural. I go back to that because I ran a lot of hunter games. In those it was a lot of, okay, build a hunter, modern day, here's your restrictions. You know the setting, so just use the core rules, build a hunter, and we play from there. But what I tried to do with Diablo was I wanted to, as much as possible, emulate the video game, but on the tabletop. So there are several steps that I took to do that. And it goes far beyond just make a character and I'll tell a Diablo story. There are, I guess I would say, lazier GMs out there that would do that, but I had the time, so I figured, why not? So I wanted to keep the players using the main rule book, and they did. The only thing outside of that they needed was the notes and restrictions that I made on characters. And for this, you kind of had to make some adjustments, much like they did when they converted Rifts over to Savage Worlds. Because Savage Worlds is designed to be a point-buy system, whereas, like in D&D, if you want to build a wizard rogue, then you have to spend time playing and gain a couple of levels to multi-class to do that. Savage Worlds, you can, because it's a point-buy system, you can buy the stuff for magic, buy the skills for the rogue, and get that character, out the gate and start playing it. But when you're talking about Diablo or Rifts, that is, if you've ever played Rifts, you know what I'm talking about. They have OCCs, occupational character classes, just like D&D has character classes. Savage Worlds doesn't really have character classes. So how do you emulate that? How do you bring character classes over into Savage Worlds? Well, what they did in Rifts was they created these things called iconic frameworks. And you had a framework, an iconic framework for each character class. And what it did was it gave you certain things starting out before you ever created your character. It gave you certain bonuses, certain edges, certain equipment, and sometimes certain hindrances, and then you made your character on top of that. And that's how they emulated the classes. And I looked at that and I said, I can really do the same thing with Diablo. So there are 7 total classes in Diablo. The only one I didn't do was the Witch Doctor, because the Witch Doctor was kind of a comic relief character that they put in the video game. And between the fact that there's already a wizard and there's already a necromancer, it just seemed really redundant to do the Witch Doctor. So I left him out, but I created an iconic framework for the Barbarian, the Demon Hunter, the Necromancer, the Crusader, the Wizard, and the Monk. So what I did was I let each player pick a character class or a framework, and fortunately my group, they all chose to play different ones, so they have kind of a good mix. And I'm not going to go through everything I did, and I couldn't upload the files if I wanted to, because I'm an old school pen and paper guy. I tend to write everything out by hand, so there's not really a digital version to put out there. So the way the iconic frameworks worked, let's say the Demon Hunter, for instance, would start with a shooting at D6. He would start with an agility at D6. Then they would get to pick one, a bow, a crossbow, or a longbow to start with. And then he would also get the edge from page 43, Nerves of Steel. There's 4 things like that for each framework. And each one's a little bit different and gives the character something to make them feel like their classes. Then on top of that, each framework also got for free. You get all this for free. This is all before you start making the character, before you actually start spending points. But each framework also came with Arcane Background Nephilim. So if you haven't played Diablo, that's what your character is in the game. You're a Nephilim. And if you don't know what a Nephilim is, historically a Nephilim is like a child between an angel and a human. In the Diablo universe, they are the offshoot of angels and demons that, got together, and, well, you can work the rest of that out for yourself. But anyway, they are kind of half human, half angelic type creatures. And they have powers. So the arcane background it works just like the arcane backgrounds that are in the book. You have your arcane skill, which is for each thing. Like the Barbarian is fury, the Demon Hunter is hatred, so on and so forth. But even though those have individual names like that, because that's what they are in the video game, they're all still just your arcane skill. They're what you roll when you use an arcane power. Along with that, you get 15 power points, and you get a starting power. You get 1 at each rank, per class, or you get an edge. So there are 5 ranks in Savage Worlds. There's Novice, Seasoned, Veteran, Heroic, and Legendary. And that's kind of like your leveling. So at each one of those, you're going, including the first one, you're going to pick up either a power or an edge for free. And I have a chart that I made that goes off of, and at each one, like the Demon Hunter gets, at Novice they get Hungering Arrow, which the way I emulated Hungering Arrow was they gained the bolt power from page 156, and I did that for each rank all the way through Legendary for each of the classes. Now you can get your power points back the normal way, where they recharge like 5 per hour, but each class also has a way to get them back a little faster, just like they do in the video game. The Demon Hunter, each time he wounds an enemy with Hungering Arrow, he gains D3 power points. He can't go above his starting power points, but it allows them to gain power points back rather fast. And that's pretty much it as far as the character creation part of it goes. They get their free framework stuff, they get their arcane background, Nephilim, which gives them power points and the ability to use powers. And all I did was take powers. I went through each class in the game and found really cool powers that people use a lot, and found a power or edge in the Savage Worlds rulebook that emulated that power, and they get that for free at each rank. They still get their regular upgrades and advances like normal, so you still have the ability to customize your character. The other thing that I did was I created a list of rarities for items, mainly weapons and armor, that go through, start at normal, then they go to magic, rare, and legendary. And as the items become more powerful, they give you bonuses to hit or bonuses to defense. Legendary items also give you random magical abilities. And from magic, rare, and legendary, each one give you more and more gem slots in the weapons that you can add gems to. And then I did an entire list of gems ranging from level 1 to 3 on each type of gem and what they would do. And you can, just like in the video game, go back to town, you found these gems, you can pay an artisan to put these gems into your weapon, and now your weapon is granting you this bonus, whatever bonus, and you can customize the bonus. You can use 3 gems of the same type, you can use 3 gems of 3 different types to gain 3 different bonuses, and so on and so forth. And I had to do kind of a custom encumbrance system for it, because in the video game you come back to town after a run and you've got, 60 weapons and armor items on you and hundreds of gold, which just doesn't translate to tabletop well. So I did a system that limits the amount that you can carry of every type of item and every type of gem and how much gold, and it just makes it a little more realistic tabletop wise. It also gives your characters a reason to continuously go back to town and spend that stuff. So what books did I use to bring Diablo to the tabletop? Well, I obviously used the main rule book, and in it you have setting rules, and setting rules are rules that you can apply to any setting. There's a whole bunch of them. You can pick and choose which ones you want to use. You can apply them to a setting, and they give the game a different feel. There's like, each one of these breaks the core rules in some way. So the 3 that I used were Born a Hero, which means they can ignore rank requirements for edges during character creation. Fast Healing, so they can do natural healing rolls once per day instead of once per week. And heroes never die, which is kind of self-explanatory. You know, they might get knocked off a cliff and be gone for a little while, but somehow they survived and they came back. Because I'm not out to kill the players, I want them to play through a Diablo tabletop game. So I used the main book and setting rules from that, and I've used monsters out of the main book. I have also used monsters out of the horror companion. Believe it or not, there are a ton of monsters in here that very much fit the descriptions of monsters in the Diablo universe. So if you're doing Diablo, the horror companion is a really nice addition to have. It's not a must, but it's also not very expensive if you wanted to add on to it. The other thing I did is, yeah, I know a lot of the lore from playing the video game as much as we have, but I went on Amazon and they have these really cool books, and I bought 2 of them. And the first one I bought, this one, is the Book of Cain, and these are put out by Blizzard, and they are, let's see if I can get close so you can see the paper. They are made to be like replicas of the in-game item, the Book of Cain that's in the game, and it basically does the entire history of the world of Sanctuary. So you have a setting right here in front of you. Even if you don't know all of the stuff from the video game, you get one of these books. I think these were like $20 on Amazon, and they are really cool. I mean, they're fun to read. There's no mechanics, no video game stuff in here. It's literally like just a fluff book. And it has a thing in the back which came with a map of Sanctuary, which I put out on the table on game night so the players can see it if they want to. The other book that I got to help me out was the Book of Adria, and even though it doesn't have stats in it, this thing is literally a monster manual. It's every monster from the lore, from Diablo, and like the background history, descriptions, everything on them. And you can take this and you can take the creature design rules from Savage Worlds, put them together, and there's really nothing you can't do for Diablo with that. Those 2 aren't must-haves. Obviously, if you feel like you know the game well enough that you can do all of that yourself, that's fine. I think they're really cool to have. And I'm a big fan of Diablo, so I buy a lot of the Diablo stuff. And like I said, they're fun to read. So, I mean, sometimes I'll just sit and read just monster lore for hours. And you'll be amazed at what kind of ideas pop into your head when you're doing that. The Book of Cain, it starts like at the beginning time before Sanctuary, the world was formed. And it goes through how the world was formed, why it was formed, all the way up to present day, and it's just got a ton of information in it that's really good for running an RPG. If you're going to do Diablo, my advice is to use maps and miniatures. And I understand some people don't like maps and miniatures. I love maps and miniatures, but if you're going to do it to emulate the video game, it's a very combat-oriented RPG. It's a very hack and slash. Even in the video game, it's an action RPG. You go to town, you talk to somebody. Maybe you talk to a couple of people. They give you a little information here, a little information there, and then you're off on another quest which involves killing hundreds of monsters and collecting tons of treasure and visiting cool locations, and then you port back to town and you rinse and repeat. So doing that in the tabletop version, I've got a couple of guys that play my game that love combat. They're all about the combat. They'll do the role playing, but they don't. It's not their favorite part. They love to hit stuff. So this particular game is a big hit with them. They love the combat, and they're getting a lot of it. And the other thing that I would do, and what I use is, you can use whatever miniatures you want. I have been using Loki battle mats for a while, and I've showed these off, did a whole nother video on them. I've got the Dungeon Volume 1 and Volume 2, and just real quick, these open up to really nice mats that you can put together on the tabletop and play with. And I've been using that, and I've been using the giant book of battle mats, which again, same type thing. You can open it up. You've got beautiful battle mats to fight on. And the other thing that I would do is you need to plot it out ahead of time. And Savage Worlds is very big on what they call plot point campaigns. And that's really what I did here. I don't know why I colored everything. I'm just artsy-fartsy sometimes. I'm sorry about the growling. That's my dog. But I basically plot pointed out a campaign, Act 1 through 5, that takes them from novice all the way to legendary. And each section gets them in advance. And as they go through the sections, they get more powerful. And each of those sections, I have all the fluff stuff written out on my end for it. It was a couple of weeks of work to get everything put together and done, but once I got it put together and done, it went really well. We've played a few sessions. We've really enjoyed it. They've all said that it feels like Diablo. They love it. They're having a great time, and they're getting to do lots of combat. So, I mean, that's a good thing. But that's it. I used setting rules. I designed iconic frameworks to match up with the character classes. I created edge and bonus powers that they would get at each rank. I suggest using maps and miniatures. And above all, do your plot point campaign. Know where your story is going from beginning to end. And that will make each week's session very, very easy to run. That's all I've got on it for right now. I may do another video on it when we get closer to the end of it, just to go over again how they did, maybe tell some of the story. Because my story doesn't take place in the video game. It takes place 40 years after Diablo 3. Obviously Diablo is trying to come back. Their servants of Diablo are trying to bring him back using a shard from the Black Soul Stone that was destroyed by Mathiel, and there was one shard that he did not consume, and the bad guys are trying to find that shard and find a new host to bring Diablo back into this world, and the players are trying to stop it. But we have a long road to go on that. And anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, I'm for copyright reasons and the fact that I didn't type any of this out, I can't upload it, so I'll just kind of make some videos to tell you how it went. And good night, good luck.